Welcome to the Great Basin Smoke Dispersion Briefing for Friday, March 31st. This is Gina McGuire. Over the last 24 hours, we've had some precipitation, especially over the eastern half of the Great Basin, where the heaviest amounts have occurred, but also some lighter precipitation further west across much of Nevada into southern Idaho. Over the last 7 days, the image on the left shows where the precipitation has occurred, and again, the heaviest precipitation over the last week has occurred in the Sierra and also over parts of western Utah and the central Idaho mountains. And this has largely been above normal for what we would normally see this time of year. However, the image on the right shows the percent of normal precipitation over the last 30 days, and due to long periods of dry weather in March, we've had generally below normal precipitation over the southern two-thirds of the Great Basin, and still near to above normal precipitation over central Idaho. The satellite imagery from this morning shows the strong area of low pressure that moved through the western half of the Great Basin yesterday has now dropped southeast into northern Arizona and will continue moving eastward. This will still continue clouds and showers over much of Utah into parts of western Wyoming and eastern Nevada, and gusty northwest winds over the rest of western Nevada up into Idaho. Now looking at the ventilation index for today, we see good dispersion over the western half of the Great Basin due to these gusty north-northwest winds, and poor dispersion over parts of Utah into Wyoming and central Idaho, where winds are lighter and we're also seeing lower mixing heights. If we break down these components, we can see the winds on the left and see where the strongest winds are today over much of Nevada into western Utah and up into parts of Idaho, and much weaker wind flow over southeast Utah. Also, mixing heights are quite a bit higher over far southern areas and eastern areas of the Great Basin, and lower as you go north and west. If we move into Saturday, the storm system starts to move eastward, with possibly some showers lingering over eastern Utah, but drier conditions elsewhere across the Great Basin. We also have a ridge of high pressure briefly moving in, accounting for lighter winds and some warming temperatures. We may see a few showers over the central Idaho mountains, but again, most of the Great Basin tomorrow will remain dry. Ventilation index will be decreasing under this ridge of high pressure with poor dispersion over western and northern areas, and better dispersion as you move further south and east into parts of southern Nevada, the Arizona Strip, and southern Utah. The winds on Saturday, as we see from the image on the left, are much lighter under the ridge, as would be expected over northern and western Nevada up into Idaho and Wyoming, and still gusty over southern areas of the Great Basin, along with higher mixing heights, accounting for that better dispersion. Looking at Sunday, we have a quick-moving storm system that will move across the Great Basin, bringing a strip of wet weather over parts of northern and central Nevada up into northern Utah and southwest Wyoming. This will be fairly quick-moving and generally drop light amounts of precipitation. Dispersion will remain poor under those lighter winds and as those clouds and showers increase over parts of Nevada and Utah, and a little bit better up north into Idaho. Looking at the winds on Sunday, the image on the left, light winds across much of the southern two-thirds of the Great Basin, and some gusty northwest winds over parts of Idaho and Wyoming, accounting for that better dispersion. Mixing heights will remain relatively moderate over most areas, and just a little bit lower over the higher elevations of Utah into Wyoming and in the Sierra. Looking at the forecast clearing index for Utah over the next few days, and you can see what we've already talked about. High clearing indices today indicating good dispersion in all areas across Utah, and then dispersion will slowly deteriorate as we move through Saturday and Sunday. Overall forecast amounts of precipitation over the next 3 days are highest, especially today across Utah in the higher elevations, where 1 to 2 inches of total precipitation may fall, and higher elevations will see that as snowfall. Further west, generally lighter amounts of precipitation, and most of this will be occurring over northern and western Nevada as we move into Sunday. As we go into early next week, this system moving through on Sunday moves into the eastern half of the Great Basin with still some wet weather over parts of the Arizona Strip and southern and eastern Utah, and drier weather with northwest winds returning to the western side of the Great Basin. Dispersion will remain quite good in all areas as we go into early next week. However, as we move into Tuesday and a ridge of high pressure builds along the west coast, we'll see still dry weather across most areas with a few lingering showers over eastern Utah, and again, ventilation indices will be decreasing as that ridge moves in and winds decrease, especially across Nevada and up into Idaho. By the middle of next week, we may see a quick storm system bring very light showers up to northern parts of Idaho, into southern Idaho and northern Utah. However, the rest of the Great Basin will remain dry with generally poor dispersion. By Thursday, this ridge of high pressure moves across the Rockies into the eastern side of the Great Basin, again with light winds and poor dispersion. However, southwest winds will be increasing across western Nevada up into western Idaho, along with some light showers and clouds as the next storm system moves in. Therefore, the ventilation indices will be increasing in Thursday in western areas. Overall, forecast amounts of precipitation will remain relatively light for the days 4 and 5, which is Monday through Wednesday of next week, and generally targeting the eastern half of the Great Basin. As we go through the next month, we will continue to see below normal temperatures, especially over the western half of the Great Basin, along with above normal precipitation. Therefore, this wet spring will likely be continuing throughout the next 8 to 14 days. That concludes our briefing for today. If you have any questions, feel free to contact us. Thank you for listening.